Good evening and welcome to Tete-a-Tete, the Opera Festival, broadcasting live from the Cockpit Theatre and Cockpit Broadcasting. My name is Bill Banks-Jones. I'm Artistic Director of Tete-a-Tete and programme the festival. Here to say a couple of things before you see the performance that we did live here at the Cockpit to a live audience, to our great pleasure, 2 nights ago. The first thing to say is, like everybody, we've had an extraordinary last 6 months, and nobody more so than all the artists in this festival. After a month or two of lockdown, I felt very determined to do everything we could to bring performance back to live audiences. And really, I think we're all over the moon that we've managed to do that, even though it has been quite compromised by COVID compliance. The artists have all stuck with this like you wouldn't believe, and it has meant that people have had to turn themselves inside down and upside down to hang on to the core of their work. The Hive is an extraordinary case because it has existed in many iterations and versions and experiments and developmental stages for a very long time. I directed one version back in 2017 for Tete-a-Tete at the Arcola, and now it had reached its culmination when the carpet was pulled out from under the company. This version would have had an orchestra and a chorus and, well, you'll see some of what it might have been, but this was due to be the icing on the cake. Instead, we presented a different version, but actually something very interesting indeed, I think. And I wanted to give you this background so you have in your mind as you watch it quite what you're seeing, really. The other thing to say to you, which is very important for the whole of the theatre and opera sector, is that we are working with the Paul Hamlyn Foundation to investigate and experiment with the return to live performance. So it's important that we get as much feedback as we can, even from you watching this broadcast. You'll receive an email at the end of this, and it will link you to a survey which we really appreciate answered, so that we can have a full picture of how to bring the whole of our sector back to performing. You've been sold an interactive broadcast, and that is because the interaction comes after the movie, where we've got a really interesting panel tonight, actually, for whom you can type any questions that you have into the chat. They will get magically relayed to me on the screen up here, and I'll pass them back to the panel. The price of this interactive broadcast that you've been sold has been kept deliberately low, so that you can show your appreciation, choose your own price, really, by clicking easydonate.org/hive, which will magically appear in the chat and come back now and again through this broadcast. But that's quite enough of me. Time now to hand you over to the Hive COVID cut.
Hello. Welcome to the Hive. Now, though it's based on true events, the Hive is a story. We all need stories. It's what makes us different from the apes. And never more so than in these troubled times of, well, what? Lock up, lock in, lock down, locked. Yeah, stories, they take us to a different world. It's not always a comfortable world, it's not always cosy and nice, but it is sometimes quite fascinating. Like all good stories, this one starts with Once Upon a Time.
Polly put the kettle on, Polly put the kettle on, Polly put the kettle on, we'll all have tea.
Once upon a time, in a certain place, let's say a forest, certain things happened. It started with Little Red Riding Hood. She was skipping through the forest. Correction, nobody skips through a forest. She was sauntering through the forest. She was going to visit her granny, a difficult old lady, and she had with her a basket of goodies that her mummy had made because Granny had been poorly and she needed a visitor. Little Red Riding Hood was wearing her red hood and carrying her iPhone. She was already quite bored, and so she rang her best friend while she still had some signal on her phone.
These berries are so delicious, yeah, I just can't resist. Even though Nana's waiting for me, she's poorly and Mum bakes her berry cakes.
Drown the bitch, the dirty witch. Duck her again, she's still breathing.
Dunno, probably late, yeah, Nana will want to stay and chat. She gets lonely, it's boring just watching daytime TV. Mum begged to move nearer, but she's like, no. She likes it out here, it's her home. It's where she was born and raised. Mum begged to move nearer, but she's like, no. She's a stubborn old boot.
Drown the bitch, the dirty witch. Duck her again, she's still breathing. Drown the bitch, the dirty witch. Duck her again, she's still breathing.
Yum, I am starving. Yeah, but I daren't eat Nana's cake. I once had her scones and then there were none. If I do it again, she'll kill me. Oh, but my signal is gone. It's rubbish in this forest. I'd better get going or else I'll be going home in the dark.
Little Red Riding Hood hurries off to her granny's. Oh, well, I can hear something, a choir singing. Are they trying to warn her?
Ring a roses, a pocket full of posies, a tissue, we all fall down.
Now, it happened that some other people were in the forest, and some of them were not very nice. In particular, there was a very nasty man called Hansel Grimm. Here's a picture of him. Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Or is it an English girl? Oh, be she alive or be she dead, I'll grind her bones to make my bread.
Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells and pretty maids all in a row. Yes, pretty maids all in a row.
Now, Hunter, the huntsman, is also in the forest. He looks like a hunter. He's dressed in traditional gear, he's got feathers in his hat, and he carries a big shotgun over his shoulder. Now, you might think that because he's a huntsman, he's a bit cruel. But no. Hunter is a very kind man. He always eats the creatures he kills.
Ha! Couldn't resist. Sitting duck. Well, pheasant. Right, that's enough. Time to head for home. What the?
Now, what Hunter the huntsman doesn't know is that Hansel the big bad wolf has caught and abducted Little Red Riding Hood, and he's taken her to his gingerbread house in another part of the forest. Let's go and have a look. So, here we are at the gingerbread house. Looks like they're having fun inside here. It's a wild party. Or is it an orgy? They're all wearing strange costumes. Animals. Suddenly, the door opens and Hansel Grimm comes out. He's wearing his wolf's head. He's carrying a tinny and he's about to roll up a cigarette. But before he does that, he calls back into the house for Gretel, his wife, to come. Now, Gretel Grimm is not just Hansel's wife. She's also his partner in crime. Soon she comes out, she's wearing a cow's costume. She's got big udders. Hansel teases and grabs. She teases and grabs, and the pair of them have a right grabby time. Gretel's a bit of a sex bomb.
Show me your ass, big fat ass. Show me your udders, big fat udders. Gretel, Petal, fill my bum, give me the hump. That's the way you do it.
Meanwhile, under the gingerbread house, Little Red Riding Hood is held captive. She's in the cellar. The Grimm's nasty cellar, and she's bound and gagged and hanging from a meat hook.
Someone come, find me, save me. I can't scream, I can't speak, help me. They've took my phone, who are they? Will I die here? Is this it? Oh, Jesus! Oh, Mummy! Someone help me!
Poor girl. Let's hope Hunter the Huntsman finds her. Otherwise, I don't know what's going to happen. Meanwhile, in another part of the forest. Come with me.
Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go.
Now, we're in a deep, dark part of the forest. Suddenly Gretel comes running in. Her costume's all awry. It's all rucked up. What's she been doing? Has she been having sex with Hansel?
Oh, that man is insatiable. I met Hansel when I was 13. He was that much older and quite a glamour boy round our way. He had a motorbike and wore his hair back in a ponytail. He was really good looking. He worked in town and I was from the backwoods, really. He called me his little bumpkin. I met him in a line dance in the village hall. He wasn't dancing, he'd come for a look with some of his biker friends. I saw Hansel as soon as he came in. I thought, ooh, he's a bit tasty. After the dance, he gave me a ride on his bike. He said he'd just take me home. But we rode around the lanes for hours. Didn't have crash helmets or anything on. He stopped in the woods. He took some cider out of his pillion seat. We drank it all. Then we had sex. I'd never had it with anyone that I fancied before. He was much better at it than my brothers or my dad. His dad was a builder in town. His mum worked as a dinner lady. He had 3 brothers in school. I never said nothing about me. Well, how could I? Drown the bitch, the dirty witch. Dunk her again, she's still breathing.
That summer he took me all over, even
down the bitch, the dirty witch. Dunk her again, she's still breathing. Down the bitch, the dirty witch. Dunk her again, she's still breathing. He treated me like a princess, like I was. Dunk her again, she's still breathing.
Gretel!
Like I was.
Dunk her again, she's still breathing.
I can hear Hansel. He's coming through the forest, crashing and banging and singing. Fee, fi, fo, fum. I sniff the scent of my wife's bum. He really is a bit gross, Hansel. Gretel hears him too, and she runs away into the gingerbread house, and she shuts the door.
There was a little girl, and she had a little curl, and right in the middle of her forehead. And when she was good, she was very, very good, and when she was bad, she was horrid.
You run away, you fat cunt! You know I doesn't like girls who tries to run away. Where do they end up? Down below. That's where. We got a nice little cunt waiting for us there, haven't we? Little Red Riding Hood. Save her for later. Special treat.
Now, while all that's been going on, Hunter has located the gingerbread house, and he's gone inside and realised it's a party. He's asked about the scream, but no one answers him. No one seems to have heard anything except him. He has a glass of wine. In fact, he has several. And eventually, he opens the door of the gingerbread house and he stumbles out into the clearing. And there's Hansel.
Shagging wooden, hear the chainsaw massacre. I ain't seen you at one of our do's. I've not been, never been at one of your do's. Like I say, I was on my way home when I heard this noise, like someone in distress. Lost, maybe trapped, maybe someone caught in a bush, tangled in the ivy, frightened by an animal. Did you see anything in the woods? In the woods? Nah, I'm the only wolf in these woods. That's a fine head of hair you got, the thrill on a dark night when the moon is out. No abducted girlies, no abducted girl, no one tied and gagged, no one waiting to be eaten, no one tied and gagged, no one waiting to be eaten. Come on in, see for yourself, come right in, hands, but really I must be getting home. My wife will be worried. My wife puts on a show. My wife will be worried. She loves a party as Gretel. I'm Mr. Punch and she's my Judy. That's the way to do it. Give him a blow. There's the promise of pleasure that you'll be missing a treat. Maybe another time.
Hunter creeps back into the clearing. He wasn't satisfied at all with what Hansel said. He's still worried about the scream. He still knows something strange is going on, and he comes for another look.
I should have stayed, searched some more, not taken no for an answer.
Ted!
I should have said you're lying to me, you've begun, should have been much tougher. You're standing right next to it, yet somehow on the edge where should be love and trust, a den of lust. How do you ever know you're on the edge?
Not in touch. Drinking too much.
It shakes your faith, I stop going to church. How could God let this happen to those poor girls?
Dead!
You know we all can do evil things, and in fact we all do evil things.
Dead.
Something held me back. I didn't take that step. I could have found the girl, saved Red Riding Hood.
Dead.
There were other bodies buried down there. Something held me back.
Poor, tortured Hunter. He falls to his knees as if he's praying, but he doesn't believe in God anymore. You see, what Hunter doesn't know is that Little Red Riding Hood isn't the first girl that the Grimms have abducted and tortured and killed. No, no, no. She's one of many, including a lovely young woman called Beauty. Now, Beauty's sister, Maid Marian, has been searching for her for many years, and she's still searching. Sometimes she appears to Hunter, as in a dream or a vision.
Smiles away, you and your eyes. Sleepity baby, do not cry, and I will sing a lullaby.
We looked at each other. Because in our childhood, we'd had phantoms, and Beauty used to paint them. All these things felt like an affirmation. Then there was a very long, deep silence that held us all.
They'll never get a fucking confession out of me, because I ain't fucking done nothing.
By now, Hansel Grimm is dead, and Gretel Grimm is in prison. She's been convicted of killing 10 young women. She never admitted to anything, and to this very day she maintains her innocence. Here she is in her prison cell, curled up, cuddling her furry toy bunny.
I had a real bunny once in here, but they killed it. I got back from tea and he was dead in his cage. There was blood everywhere. I told my house cats, Jack and Jill and Mary and Lammy, I miss them terrible, it's cruel keeping me from my pets. Hansel killed my babies, but I've had some more. I just wanted something to love me. I've been accused of all sorts, abducting, abusing, torturing, lies, all lies. I died of tea. I thought I was their mother. I told them of tea. It was Hansel.
Holly put the kettle on, Holly put the kettle, Holly put the kettle on, we all have tea. Suki, take it off again, Suki, take it off again, Suki, take it off again, they've all gone away.
I'm teaching and I'm dancing, just another housewife. I ain't never done nothing wrong. I was their mother. She was our mother. I bought cups of tea. She bought us cups of tea. I was their mother. She was our mother. Just another housewife. She ain't never done nothing wrong.
Step and kick, ball change, shuffle. Oh, Gretel. She lives in a world of her own. She's never going to come out of it, not until she dies. But what else has happened to the people in the story? What about Maid Marian and Hunter? Hunter never did find the lost girl, but he did find some redemption. And rather like the ancient mariner, he went on to tell of his experiences to anyone who would listen. Well, it's a story, right?
As for me, did I get over it? You tell me. all these years later, I still don't know. I was stuck in why me? What did I do to deserve this fate? But then, what did those poor girls do to deserve it? Where was God in all of this? Why didn't God save them? I did go back to church once. It was warm and bright with candlelight. Not like when I was an altar boy, up at 5, cold and dark, waiting for Father Kelly to maul me. To what could I confess terrible dreams of blood and slaughter? Hansel the Grim Reaper. Sorry, but maybe that's what he was. Trapping these creatures, these girls with young beating hearts, they were snared and butchered. I despair over human nature, my own included. After the trial I read Malleus Maleficarum, the 15th century hammer of the witches, 90% of whom are women. It insists women are more prone to vice, more prone to wickedness. Did Gretel really deserve that? All the evidence was circumstantial. I have struggled, but I have prevailed. I hope I found catharsis. Transform it to him, to us, and turn
The thing about stories, well, this one anyway, is that no one is innocent. All pay the price. No one escapes.
We all fall down.
Everyone lived not happily ever after. And that is the end of his story.
The beginning of Act 1. The conference. Imagine, if you will, a situation where a psychopathic killer has you in his power. You know this person doesn't give a damn about you. He has no empathy, no humanity. He is the hunter, the lone wolf, attractive, charismatic. He has an aura. It draws you in. Makes you part of the act. But he will kill you, whatever you say or do. His urge is overwhelming. He craves to be watching as life leaves your eyes. He's looking at you in the eyes, mesmerizing you. Tell me, what will you do? Let's say I'm the killer, you're the victim. I'm going to do something to you. I have total control, and I'm going to do it at my leisure. You are lost, alienated, and alone. You know you are down a very dark alleyway. You are trying everything to stop it, everything in your power. You're about to be killed. And I don't give a fuck. What is it that happens between us at the point of death? You've gone, but I've taken something of you. Not just trophies, a finger, a toe. No. Your life essence, your life force, you. And then there are the women, There is a school of thought which says they can't be psychopaths. Women are not natural killers.
say, what is it about opera? I come from a rock and roll background, and I find some of the things in this piece extremely difficult to deal with. I'm quite squeamish, so maybe it's just me. But when the opera people get involved, it's like, well, hey, serial killers, lots of deaths, lots of blood, lots of gore, filming in a cemetery, graveyard, even better. So there's a kind of there's a fascination with these horrible deeds that are going on, which I guess is part of human nature. And this piece tries to take a look at some of those things and not exactly find empathy with them, but just kind of look at them with some kind of understanding. And that's very hard to do because some of the things in the piece are absolutely appalling, just so awful. But the music, I think, tries to find some kind of through line of emotion. And although these people are committing terrible, terrible deeds, they are still human beings. And the music kind of gives us a feeling of that. You know, there are two families, we're doing just a couple of songs from the first half of the opera. There are two families involved. One is Hansel and Gretel. You've seen this already, but Hansel and Gretel do some just absolutely unimaginably bad things. And so that's one thing. And the other two people are, well, actually talk about them first. Hansel and Gretel. Gretel, she's still a human being, you know. She genuinely loves her rabbits. She genuinely even loves the victims that they kill. She has normal feelings as well. And then there's the other family, Hunter and Griselda. Now Hunter walked into this situation, he's a solicitor and he happened to be on duty that particular day and was assigned this case basically to defend Gretel. And that changed his whole life and the whole life of his family just by walking into his office one day. And they're interesting because they have parallel, they both have a lot of children, and Griselda is the wife, and she's an emotional support to Hunter, and they go through just the most unimaginable torture trying to deal with this thing. It goes on for years and years and years and years. Anyway, the music we're going to do now is a look at the other side of this thing, the kind of good people, Hunter and Griselda. So I'm going to just sing a little recit, which is Hunter trying to come to terms with the appalling things that he's got to kind of look at and deal with and think about all the time in order to defend this person. And then Griselda, who's incredible support to him through all this trauma. And their marriage takes terrible toll. It's actually a line in the piece. Takes a terrible toll on their marriage. But this is firstly Hunter and then Griselda. When Gretel was interviewed by a psychiatrist, she said she had never had an orgasm in her life, and as she prefers women to blokes, you think, well, all the heavy breathing, and all of the moaning and the groaning, she was putting on an act just to please Hansel. Hansel said he wanted to try Gretel on some lesbian.
There was some suggestion that Gretel was the dominant
could listen to Jess Walker singing Carol's words and Harvey's music like that forever. That piece, I should explain to you now, I should maybe have done this at the beginning, was a long film that showed different iterations of the piece over the years, and then we cut to the live performance that came at the end of that film. We showed the audience here at the Cockpit a couple of nights ago with the amazing Jess and Harvey and those 2 and a bit songs, and amazing it was too, and amazing to hear Jess doing her first performance to a live audience for 6 months. So brave of all these great artists. Anyway, let me ask our panel to come back into the room. We had a brief chat at the beginning, but also had a bit of technology to sort out. So I've got a good question first for right away. But first, Harvey, tell us what will happen if people send money to easydonate.org/hive.
Well, the first thing it will do is give us some kind of hope. These 6 months have been pretty difficult, very, very difficult for everyone in very many different ways. But for musicians, it's a very hard time just not knowing when or how we're going to get back to live performance. I mean, it was great to try it out just the other day. But if you donate to us, then you'll find that the money will go towards musicians and creative artists that we work with, and we hope to put on a performance. We're supposed to do another 2 performances of the Hive. We have one tentatively booked in Liverpool, and interesting, and with a very, very fine ensemble of musicians there. I think there are 9 musicians playing in the piece, and we worked with Pixels, who are a fabulous bunch of musicians, and it will enable them to stay alive and us to continue doing the work that we're doing on the Hive, and hopefully take it forward to a full performance sometime, which we hope to do on Wednesday, but we'll get there by hook or by crook. But if you can help us with that, we'll be very, very grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been it's a fascinating thing for me, because I directed the iteration we did, the workshop version with Tete a Tete 4 years ago now, in 2016 at the Arcola. And what's fascinating is hearing pretty much all of the music is there, but it's acquired more and more dimensions each time you've done it. It's extraordinary. Leo's popped up on our screen, and it might be, and there's Catherine, and I think it would be quite interesting to ask you why you're here. I might just give a bit of context that this is a piece derived from true stories, and you are the real people from the story. Is that fair? Would you like to expand on that, Leo and Catherine?
Well, I can see how the part of the narrative came from the West case, which I was involved in as Rose West's solicitor. But I really felt as I watched that, in the way the film unpicked Grimm's fairy tales, to really, it was kind of saying that there's this darkness to human nature, this deathly side, which is, it's been there throughout history and is inevitable. And it's almost as though the innocence of children, for which these fairy tales were made, this darkness is a kind of, there's a slight pessimism. The darkness is so kind of persistent that the innocence of the children doesn't seem to touch the surface, really. It can't quash that darkness. I mean, it seems the lesson is just to beware and caution for the future. I mean, it was interesting that at the end, the narrative was of a police tape around cemetery where death has already happened. It's as though kind of the narrative is kind of more universal. It's unpicking this deathly part of human nature. So yes, certainly there's a parallel with the West case, but I think actually in emphasizing Grimm's fairy tales, it kind of takes it to a slightly different place.
Yes, that's certainly true. Well, Carol, you're the person that did that. Where did that inspiration come from when you wrote the words and took it in this direction?
I wish I could remember. It came from a piece of work I did originally as a fellow at King's College London in a long time ago, over 12 years ago. And that was called No One Escapes. And that was a study of women who'd committed very violent crimes, including murder, and in some cases serial murder. And a lot of the people whom I interviewed in the process of making that piece of work and recorded them. So I had the verbatim stories from many of the people involved on all sides of those stories. And that was the genesis of the opera. But I think I didn't want it to be literal. I never wanted it to be literal. And I did want it to be an examination of the dark side of human nature, which coincidentally we're all living through now, and indeed worldwide. And how you can't, there's no point in pretending it isn't there. And there's no point, I think, in ignoring it and just covering it a veneer of cheerfulness. We have to look at these things, I believe. And I think we have to see them for what they are. I'm not a great believer in good and evil. I think everything's on a scale. And I think it's all to do with what moral compass you were given as a very young person. And many people have a struggle with that in their later lives. But I do think that examining the darker reaches of human nature with real kind of passion and involvement is a very good exercise. Is something we should all do.
Yes. Well, we've got literally 1 minute left, which is a bit alarming. But I'd just love to end up with Catherine. It was really your words that we were hearing at the end, that very last bit that Jess was singing. Carol's words capturing your thoughts. And I remember having this conversation, exactly that conversation with you when we met in 2016. And I'd love to know from you both whether you even recognise yourself on stage, and also where that forgiveness comes from, or acceptance, or whether I'm using the wrong words, but there's the kind of feeling that we saw there.
This is me, is it? You want to know?
Yeah.
I have to say I've had some trouble hearing.
Oh no.
But I do remember that the first time I can't remember where it was. It was a performance where I realised that they were the words that I'd used when Carol interviewed Leo and I. She probably remembers when, again, many years ago. And I think I just feel like I remember at the time feeling, and still feel like this, that none of us can stand in judgment on another.
But this is your religion, isn't it?
Yeah, my faith is very important to me, and I see that it's by the grace of God that we live our lives the way we do. That if I'd been given a different life experience, who's to say that I wouldn't be violent in some way? I can be violent, but obviously I've got that sort of resilience, or I've experienced love, I suppose, and because I've experienced love, that's a very strong thing to have within yourself, and perhaps enables me not to do the evil things that.
Well, Catherine always says to me, you should hate the sin and love the sinner, which is a very easy thing to say and a very difficult thing to
do,
carry out.
Yes.
Yeah, it certainly is. Well,
so it isn't that I condone anything, but at the same time, I feel like you can't condemn either.
Yes, we've slightly overrun. There's so much to talk about, but there are more than two ways you can continue this conversation. It can, of course, happen over Twitter and at Tete Opera and the Hive. It can also happen in that I know, Leo, you've now written a book, and I found it myself quite easily by searching on the internet for Leo Goatley and Rose West, and that's straight away where I got to. And I've ordered it myself. And the other way is to support a further iteration of the work by clicking on the link that will magically appear on your screen in a second. And thank you very much, all of you. I wish we'd had about another hour to talk about that. But congratulations, thank you, and good night.